So without further ado, let's crack on with our next three sessions. This theme is all about the timeless principles of a successful brand strategy. And to kick things off, we have speakers from Pladis Global, Taylors of Harrogate and Morrisons Supermarket, moderated expertly by Richard Robinson of Ingenuity Plus. So please welcome Richard and his panel to the stage.
Thank you very much, Sam. Thank you. Now, I'm so Richard Robinson, Executive Director of Ingenuity Plus. Now, I'm totally mindful that some of you are over here and some of you are over there, whereas we are here in the middle. So we had a little chat amongst ourselves, and we are going to attempt to remember to sweep the room and to come around here. At this point, I'm actually moving my chair, and we will be doing everything that we can. Now, we're talking about strategy, but most importantly, we're talking about strategy with, in my opinion, three of the best strategic marketers in the UK today. I wouldn't underestimate the intellectual, strategic and creative firepower that you have sitting in front of you at the moment. I like the fact that Dom is already looking at me going, oh God, where's he going at this? But two reasons for that. One is to basically say this panel is going to be an absolute treat for me hosting it, but also for you as the audience. And secondly, to let you know that the team are very happy taking some questions from you. Now, the rules of the game for taking questions are always the same, which are ask a question. Okay, exactly, we've been here. And we're going to probably take two at the end of our session because we need to wrap up at exactly 3:47. Okay, so if you have a burning question, think about it as we're going through, and then we will work out who the best placed person is to answer your question as you're going. So, who have I got alongside me? Well, at the end, we've got Dom Dwight, Strategy and Innovation Director, Taylors of Harrogate, the man famous for making Yorkshire tea, famous and #1 in the UK. Alongside Dom Dwight, if I said to any of you tea, what is the one thing that you'd want to have with a nice cup of tea? Biscuits, exactly. Benazir Barlet-Batada, Marketing Director of McVitie's Biscuits. You see what we did there? And if I said to any of you tea and biscuits and you were thinking about going out and buying it, where would you expect to go and buy it? Any guesses? Morrisons, exactly.
Thank you.
Rachel Eyre, Chief Customer and Marketing Officer from Morrisons. Three absolute people at the top of their career. Tea, biscuits, where you're going to buy them, online or in store, frankly. Either. I'm not fussed, and I don't think Rachel is either. So, with that in mind, we're going to be talking about some of the timeless principles of strategy and the strategy behind the brands that you lead. But before I get there, I just want to ask a quick warm-up question. We'll start at the end, Dom, with you and come back. So, optimistic, upbeat, what's making you feel optimistic and upbeat about our profession, our brands, your brands for the next 12 months?
I was tempted to go political and mention the Canadian election, but I'm going to...
Mark Carney. We all love Mark Carney.
Sense prevails. No, I'm going to say creativity. I was just looking this morning at a lovely piece of work from Channel 4, their 4 creative studio, David Wrigglesworth, the crazy use of AI to do the bonkers open house trailer. I just think seeing unbridled, irrepressible creativity makes me happy. More of that, please.
Excellent. Benazir?
Hi, I won't talk Canada and politics for sure. I'm going to go in-house like McVitie's. I'm really excited. We're celebrating 100 years of chocolate digestive. We've just done some new creative work, which kicked off last week. We've had loads of PR. Actually, can I say it? We've had 1 billion editorial reach, which is the first for us. Actually, it's bigger than any biscuit company in the last 4 years. Land that message. And I'm just really excited about the stuff that's coming. We've got like a big concept store coming up. We've had like projections. We've just been doing some really neat things. Just really positive and excited to see more creativity coming out across the industry.
Love it. Rachel, what's making you feel?
I'm going to go less highbrow and say the weather.
Nice.
With something relatively highbrow behind it, which is when you work in retail, you can have the best strategy in the world, but if you're not trading well today, then you've got no chance to execute that strategy. And for Morrisons, a brand that makes a lot of the fresh food that it sells and has bakers and fishmongers and butchers in store, great weather, May, bank holiday, barbecue season is a real opportunity for us to execute on our strategy. And I'm going to have a glass of wine in the garden when I get home.
Very, very nice. From Morrisons?
Of course.
Exactly. Good. That's what we'd like to hear. So, Dom, let's get down to the brass tacks here. So customers, we know, are being inundated with thousands, billions of impressions and messages from brands. So it's more important than ever to get brands to cut through. You've sort of maybe touched on creativity there, but can you give me a couple of examples that are not McVitie's and Morrisons of brands that you think are doing well at the moment and why they're doing well?
Yeah, sure. So kind of cutting through now, obviously not mentioning
Yes.
these two, but I will also refrain
By
from
the way, Dom actually did start off by saying he wanted to talk about McVitie's and Morrisons, and I said, no, we're not having it. It's like, because we need to have more than these two brands.
But I'll avoid talking about Yorkshire tea as well. I think, so Specsavers were talking earlier on today.
Nice.
I just think that's a fabulous example, that kind of compound creativity, the fresh consistency, but always being kind of just imaginative about I think the van stunt that they did recently was a lovely example of cutting through. It is still really difficult to cut through though. I think you could probably name all sorts of brilliant TV executions, but then if you went to speak to members of the general public, they still haven't necessarily seen them or remembered them. So cutting through is really, really hard. But I think two brands that have stuck with me. One is Domino's, which I just think, not because I've seen like one particular ad that I think is knockout creative brilliance, but just more the kind of, firstly, the Sonic branding thing of Domino's. I just think Sonic, if ever there was a time when Sonic branding was needed, it's now when our brains are just bombarded all the time. I think it cuts through. And then the other one is Gymshark, which I'm unashamedly just using my two teenage children as my case studies. For some reason, they think Gymshark is the best sports brand in the world, and I don't know how that happened. But then I was, when you just walk around, you just see Gymshark everywhere. And I think it's this interesting approach to kind of building community to create a kind of sense of belonging and grabbing attention. I just think they're doing something that a lot of more traditional brands are maybe just haven't really grasped. And I would love to know more.
And I love the fact you're picking there on Sonic branding and community, as in two things that maybe 10 years ago, especially around community, we might not have been thinking about.
Exactly. Yeah.
Okay. So, Rachel, I'm going to come to you next. So, Morrisons. So, we know Morrisons is a powerhouse of home shopping, online and in-store, online in particular. But I'm interested in how you adapt your strategies and principles to stay relevant, so that how do you keep front of mind for the customer?
I think there's probably three things. The first, and I think most important thing, is you've got to remember and stay true to the eternal truths of your category, why somebody shops in that category and how they choose where they shop. And grocery, it's one of the most competitive, the UK grocery market is one of the most competitive markets in the world. And you can get carried away with lots of things. There's lots of innovation. There's lots of things that get trialled, rode back. But fundamentally, the drivers of choice don't change and haven't changed for as long as I've worked in the industry. So first of all, and you'll recognise this, I think, yourselves as shoppers, convenience of location. Then it's range. Is the range too big, too small, just right? And then it's value for money, so the price and quality equation together. So of course you have to innovate, you have to adapt, you have to experiment, but you have to deliver a consistent shopping trip against those principles every single time. So I would say to adapt, but stay true to what drives choice for consumers in your category. I think the second thing is the customer strategy. You really do have to know who your customers are, you have to know who they're not, what matters disproportionately to them, and then linked to that from a brand strategy perspective, what's the DNA of the brand, what's the kernel of the brand that is ownable by your brand and the reason why shoppers choose you and it motivates them to shop with you. And I think if you can link something in the DNA of the brand, I talked about Market Street for Morrisons earlier, to what matters to your customers and how their needs are evolving, but staying true to the fact and not getting distracted by all the new noise coming through, remembering what is core and what drives choice in that category. You can link all of those together, and then the critical point for me is be clear on how that will serve the commercial interests of the business that you're working for, because if you're not driving the business objectives, then your brand strategy isn't working, and you can feel as relevant or topical or innovative as you like, but you're not delivering for the business.
Yeah. And do you find within that the relationship between your online customers and your in-store customers, do you change your strategies, or is it exactly the same?
Yeah, it's a great question. So obviously, first of all, a business like Morrisons and any supermarket in the UK, you are serving the whole of Britain, and anybody has the right to walk through the doors, physical or virtual, and be well served. But we do see a difference in customer profile, where in our shops, our customers are typically older and typically less affluent than the average in the UK, and our online customer is typically younger with babies and young children. So we have to get the balance right between having a consistent proposition, a consistent Morrisons, delivering what people want irrespective of the channel that they're shopping on that given day. And many people, like myself, shop multi-channel. At the same time, pivoting towards what messaging and product and proposition you're prioritising. So, for example, you might see more baby-led deals or content on the website than when you first walk into a supermarket on a south coast town that's full of retirees.
Got it. Perfect. Benazir, you lead not just McVitie's, but you lead some of the most recognisable brands in the UK. Would you like to share the other brands that you've got hiding in the portfolio? Just to give you, I mean, this is kind of like my dream job. Just go with me on this. You're about to find out why. Some of the other brands you've got sneaking in the cupboard?
Digestive.
Love it.
Rich tea.
Hello.
Chocolate digestive.
Nice.
Hobnobs. Chocolate hobnobs. Ginger nuts. Fruit shortcake.
I mean, come on, no one's mucking around here, are they? It's like
Victoria, seasonal stuff. Go ahead. Here you go.
Jaffa cakes.
Jaffa cake. Yeah, well, it's not mine anymore.
It's not yours
Someone else
anymore. Exactly. So these are, let's face it, some of the most recognisable brands in the UK. They're also some of the most timeless brands in the UK. Even how long's Hobnob's been going on? Because that's a relative newcomer.
Since 1987.
Since 1987. Is that still new product
That's
development?
new. Well, no. Yes, it is a newer product. We've got loads of innovation recently, actually.
So from a strategic point of view, how do you determine with brands like that, when do you make a big creative leap versus when do you just sort of do the same old that, you know, well, it's kind of worked for a while and we don't want to rock the boat? How do you decide what to do?
It was quite interesting listening to you because obviously we look at our strategies like you do. Like we look at what's our brand stand for, what's our consumer proposition, like what's the consumer issues, what are the problems, what's the macro context, what's the cultural context, what do our retailers want. We look at all of it and we look at how we're doing and we look at what's working. And Pladis is the company who own McVitie's. It's pretty new as a company. It was United Biscuits. It's then changed. It was privately owned as an equity house. Now it's privately owned and some family owned since 2016. So it's kind of a smaller company, a new company. And the strategies are changing and growing. And actually innovation is really important. So really they really want to grow and they really want to push innovation. So we've had a lot of flavours of chocolate digestives recently in the last few years. And that's been incredible in terms of growth. So I suppose when you're looking at all your strategies and you're creating your vision and you're creating your objectives and you're creating, your strategies of where you're going to go, it's brilliant to be really creative and just see what would work. So like, what is it Einstein says, it's like doing the same things all the time and expecting different results. You can't really do that. You've got to look at creative ways because you're always going to want growth. You're always going to want new stuff when it comes through new communications or new ways of reaching consumers or new innovation, but you've got to find the creative way. But how do you get that balance? And some of it is, as long as you know your problem that you're trying to fix, as long as you know your vision of where you're going, you can be creative for sure. And some of it's intuition. As long as you're fixing that problem, it's okay. I would say it's about a 70-30 split. I've been in companies where they say, let's have 10% test and learn. Always great until that budget gets cut. So I always think it's quite nice to have like a 70-30, 60-40 split. But I think the key thing is, rather than just thinking, I want to be creative, I would go back to, what's the problem I want to fix? How am I going to do that? And if something really creative is going to do it and you feel, intuitively that's going to work, or you've got proof it will work from research or other people that have done it, then go for it. Because actually doing new things is what drives even more growth. And it's actually really exciting as a marketer to do that. But I think just make sure you're answering the problem. Don't just do something creative for creative sake.
Yeah, nice. Got it. DBAs. Who in the room doesn't know what DBAs are? It's like a public outing, isn't it? But just going to ask the question anyway. I talked about DBAs with you just now, and you said my favourite mastermind. You said something like, if I was on Mastermind, this was my favourite topic.
After Alan Shearer.
So distinctive brand assets, which they've always been there, but over the last 18 months, 2 years, probably mainly fueled especially by Mark Ritson and Byron Sharp, have become at the forefront of everything that we're looking to do. They're things that make a fundamental difference with the brands that you work for. How influential are distinctive brand assets when it comes to thinking about strategy and then the execution you're going to be working against?
Yeah, I think they are incredibly important. I've fully drunk the Kool-Aid on all things Ehrenberg Bass and distinctive brand assets. For anyone who doesn't know, just in case, because that was a pretty shameful way of asking people to expose themselves.
Yeah, sorry, I apologise. Even I was hating myself at the point.
It's the elements of a brand's identity and how it shows up that are instantaneously recognised by consumers and correctly attributed to that brand. So if I said, just do it, you'd think Nike. If I was good at drawing, could draw the shape of the Coke bottle, you'd know it was Coke. Dom referenced I can't do it, the who.
Yeah, what about the Morrisons jingle?
I'm going to get to that.
Oh, sorry.
No. And of course, the Morrisons jingle. More reasons to shop at Morrisons. And the beauty of them is that because they are recognised, attributed in an intensely cluttered environment, marketing environment, media environment, shopping environment, they can cut through, to coin the phrase that Dom used, and really drive brand fluency, brand attribution, and therefore improve the return on your marketing investment. And it sounds like it goes against the grain of what we were just talking about, but I think you can be very creative by going back to your past and identifying what brand assets you're sitting on. For anyone who wants to find out more about it, there's a company called Mountain View. I've used them 3 times in 3 different companies to understand what the distinctive brand assets or potential distinctive brand assets for the brands that I was working on were. So they do great work to help you discover that. And when you identify them, and when we did the work for Morrisons a few years ago, we identified that there was a colourway that was distinctive to, owned by Morrisons, which was green and yellow in a category that has a lot of green and blue and some red, different shades of green. The green and yellow combination in particular was distinctive and ownable by Morrisons. And then, despite not having used it for, at the time, I think 27 years, this More Reasons to Shop at Morrisons advertising line and jingle was still, at the time, it was the 3rd most distinctive, 3rd most correctly recognised and attributed brand line in the industry. And when you think that Every Little Helps, which is by far the leader in that space, has been being used consistently with hundreds of millions of pounds of media spend behind it for 30 odd years, then that was amazing potential and it was really exciting. But as a marketeer, particularly for me, I was new in my role at Morrisons at the time, you can feel a bit compelled to or intimidated by the not invented here syndrome. But to actually be able to go back to the past, resurrect something, bring it back, have that serve as an efficiency and effectiveness shortcut in all the work that you do, but crucially adapt it to be relevant for customers and for the market and for the role your business is playing today. So I grew up in Yorkshire. I can distinctly remember the TV ads advertising Morrisons and the jingle playing out in the store. And I remembered it before I started this work with Mountain View. But at the time, it was about Morrisons shouting about all the reasons it thought people should shop at Morrisons. And what we've tried to do now, working with our agency partners, is to shine a light on the real and relatable reasons why people, real people, choose to shop at Morrisons. So it's their reasons rather than our reasons, and then obviously executed in a brand identity that has these assets codified in, and be ruthlessly consistent, and I think creatively brave in being ruthlessly consistent in executing the same assets over and over again. And if you've got good agencies, and some of my agency partners are in the room today, they'll embrace that challenge as well, because they will, like you, want to serve the interests of your business. And the more efficient and effective your marketing is, the faster your business is going to grow. So finding these assets, they're like rough diamonds, polish them off, and then execute them again and again and again, and it'll pay back for the business.
Dom, properness? So you're hearing parallels there?
Yeah. I'm absolutely the same. I agree with that. I think there's almost there's a kind of inner circle of distinctive brand assets that are the really clear things that are instantly attributable, and then there's the sort of softer ones around them that are to do with kind of how the brand shows up every time. So it might not be the colourway or the logo, but it might be, I don't know, the personality and the tone of voice that comes across in advertising or in other comms. So yeah, you're right. I think properness for us is one of those things where we changed agency in 2016 when I became marketing director, but we kept properness, which I think was a big deal for a creative agency to come on board, and instead of throw away all of the work of the previous agency and start with a clean slate, say actually some of what you had before is brilliant and we want to build on it. And I just think that's definitely helped. And I don't particularly want to throw shade today, so apologies to anyone from PG Tips and Tetley, but this is one of the things that our competitors have definitely got wrong over the last 10 years, is they've really deviated in terms of what are the messages they're trying to put out in the world. They might have stuck to the same logo, but beyond that there's not been much in the way of consistency, because there's been quite a lot of change in ownership or agency, and I just think that has really held them back from giving us a decent fight.
Brilliant. So we're at time, yes, and that means I'm not going to ask a question from the floor, but I am going to ask a quick wrap-up question for each of you, if that's okay. Super fast, otherwise I'll get shot. So, one piece of strategic advice for the people in the room to do one thing when they got back to their desk tomorrow morning. What would it be, Benazir?
Oh, gosh, okay.
And it's meant to be quick.
Yeah,
Sorry,
I realise. Be consistent with your brand.
Excellent. Dom?
I don't think you have to choose between AI or humanness. I think you could use AI in your job in the same way that everyone got their head around trying to use Google when it first arrived. So use ChatGPT to ask questions that would take you an hour to answer any other way. but also just remember that you're a human trying to sell things to other humans, and it's good to stay human together.
Great. Rachel?
Check your assumptions on who you think your customers are and make sure you know.
Nice. Okay. And with that, it is a massive pleasure. I'd like to give a huge round of applause.